Does week 5 of the 2025 college football season have the best slate of games? We here at SpOp think so because most of the schools we are about to discuss are going to make the next 12-team playoff. Week 5's matchups start with LSU traveling to Oxford, Mississippi to come up against Ole Miss, and let's see if Kiffin can continue to defend the Rebels' home turf. Illinois welcomes USC and go at it for the first time in the Big Ten. Alabama heads to Athens to take on the Georgia Bulldogs, who haven't beaten the Crimson Tide since the 2022 National Championship game. And last year's Big Ten title game programs, Oregon and Penn State, have a rematch at Beaver Stadium. Game 1, Ole Miss hosts the Bayou Bengals as LSU and the Rebels come up against each other for the 113th time. And for the last 2 seasons, when these two meet on the gridiron, it is pure cinema, with a 55-49 shootout in 2023 and the previous game ending in overtime 29-26. This game has the potential to steal headlines if the two schools again produce another tight finish. LSU, who we've talked about in week 1 and week 3 already, so that means the Tigers would have been well tested by the time we get to this game in Oxford. I think players that will step up in 2025 for LSU is in the backfield and at tight end. Hayden Durham should look to be more of the go-to guy in the 2025 running game, and maybe even the every down back for the Tigers, especially with Josh Williams gone to the NFL. Baton Rouge's running back 1 should be more electric in his sophomore year and could be more lethal as a check down target for Nussmeier in the LSU passing game. The Bayou Bengals at tight end will have to fill the hole of Mason Taylor. Taylor was 3rd in 2024 for the Tigers in receiving, but this is where we see Kelly find an adequate replacement with former dual athlete Tradez Green, who scored a touchdown in last year's encounter against Ole Miss, and a transfer portal get Bauer Sharp, who led the Sooners in 2024 for receiving yards. Maybe we see offensive coordinator Joe Sloan use the new Tiger tight end in the running game as well. The real gamble for LSU is their approach with time management when the purple and gold are in possession. Will they spoil their time on offense by airing it out just to punt it back on 4th down? Additional questions for Brian Kelly and his staff to answer is, will the Tigers get the luck of turnovers? We'll have to wait and see. Ole Miss, who we have been waiting to talk about for 2025, come into the upcoming season with no Dart, no Parrish, no Bentley, or Trey Harris. So much offensive firepower gone as Lane Kiffin enters his 3rd player cycle for the Rebels. But Kiffin, entering his 6th year as head coach, did some work in the offseason by putting together the number 4 transfer portal class with a lot to replace for Ole Miss's 2024 departures, which brings in an overhaul at wide receiver. Harrison Wallace III from Penn State, Dejon Scribbling from Oklahoma State, Traylon Ray from West Virginia, Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest, and Caleb Odom coming out of Alabama. This new Rebel wide receiver core on paper should look to repeat Ole Miss's 4,500 yards through the air and help the new starting quarterback, Austin Simmons, who will step up as QB1 in 2025. The Rebels also brought in 2 other quarterbacks from the portal, but it seems like Simmons is Kiffin's guy at the moment. So, expect another showdown between these two programs to produce a ton of offense, and we'll see again if Lane Kiffin can make it 3 in a row at home against LSU. Game 2, we have USC at Illinois, meeting for the 13th time, which goes back to 1935, and for the first time play each other since the 2008 Rose Bowl. Kicking off with USC, the Trojans' offensive line come into 2025 with a few returners, along with a couple new interior offensive linemen from the portal that will make up the projecting depth chart. This unit is going to be key in pushing and protecting USC above a 500 record. Lincoln Riley maybe has done enough this offseason to make some in the media think the Trojans are doing enough to compete in the Big Ten this season, which I'm still trying to figure out why the hype is warranted. I know Southern Cal at the moment have the #1 recruiting class for 2026, but none of those players are going to be in a Trojan uniform for 2025. So maybe those in the media and fans are misunderstanding how any of that works. On the defensive side of the ball, 3 starters are coming back from the 2024 65th ranked defense. Some needed help in the trenches. Keyshawn Silver, a defensive lineman transfer from Kentucky, may help to improve the 46th ranked rush defense. Another transfer, cornerback DJ Harvey from San Jose State, had an impressive 2024 season and could strengthen the 86th ranked pass defense. So many questions for Lincoln Riley on developing Southern Cal, especially with his record not getting any better since he has arrived. Wondering how the fan base reacts if Riley can't deliver a competitive season in LA. Slide in note, at least the Trojans didn't lose their top 2 wide receivers to the portal. Now to Illinois, whose only real portal loss was their starting running back, coming to the season with, we gotta say it again, a lot of talent, which got them a 9-3 record in 2024, and only losses came in the Big Ten. The Fighting Illini have about 5.5 defensive starters returning for the 2025 campaign. I only say half because there were 3 players that split snaps at the linebacker and DB positions. This will also go along with their new defensive line, Tomiwa Duojaye at defensive end, Kurt Neal at defensive tackle, and James Thomas Jr. on the other end. Brett Bielema also brought in depth with defensive end Carter Hewitt, as it's needed for a long college football season. If the orange and blue defensive front can create 3rd and long scenarios, as things didn't go well for the Fighting Illini with being 115th and stopping opponents on 3rd down in 2024, because I think this crucial down is where the game will be won or lost. Quick slide in note, Illinois has only gotten outplayed by opponents 3 times in the last 2 years under Bielema. So I expect USC will have to get ready to scrap rather than the "we got more speed than them" contest, and we'll see if Riley can fight on in Champaign or Illinois get their first win over Southern Cal since 1989. Game 3 has Georgia and Alabama lining up against each other in Athens, which has been a true blessing to witness for the last 5 years, as Kalen DeBoer in his debut season for the Tide got the best of Kirby Smart and his dogs. I think Georgia this time around won't be plagued by turnovers or let Alabama come out the gate with 4 straight touchdown drives in the first half. So let's dive into these premier SEC programs for their September 27th date. Starting with the Crimson Tide, who in 2025 might evolve into a passing juggernaut because DeBoer reunites with his former Washington offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. The two at UW had one of the best air attacks in the country. I would expect Grubb to be able to coach up his new offensive line in protecting the pocket and scheme around their weaknesses to give the Tide's quarterback more time to get the ball out. This should complement the backs for Bama, who I also expect at least one of them to get over 1,000 yards rushing. Jam Miller, who returns for Alabama, should be that candidate and get even more production receiving as well. The area of concern for Bama in this game will be how they stop the run, because if they don't have a comfortable lead like they had last year in Tuscaloosa, Georgia won't be forced to play catch up through the air. Now to those dogs, who definitely worked themselves in 2024, even though they won the SEC. Georgia didn't have at least 2,000 yards on the ground, as the Bulldogs went from a top 10 total offense per game to 36 last year. This was one of the many reasons why Georgia lost to Notre Dame in the second round of the college football playoffs. Kirby's Dogs will have a bit of a new O-line because they lost 3 interior offensive linemen to the NFL, but will have a tackle and a half return. If Georgia gets back on track to dominating in the running game, the Dogs could return to their national championship form. Plus, you have sophomore Nate Frazier and Josh McCray coming from the portal. Those 2 backs should help get the ball rolling the right way. Georgia has 6 returners on defense for 2025, which will be led by CJ Allen and true freshman from 2024, KJ Bolden. I think the big part of the fall off last season was the amount of turnovers the Georgia offense gave up. This just puts your defense in terrible field position to defend, which we should expect the Bulldogs overemphasize in protecting the ball more in 2025. So, if Kirby's Dogs can keep the ball from falling in the wrong hands and not play from behind throughout the game, Georgia should have a better chance at getting their first regular season win over Bama since Nick Saban's debut season for the Tide. Honorable mentions for Week 5. BYU meets Colorado in Boulder, and can the Mormons keep their 3-game winning streak over the Puffs? TCU heads west to battle the Arizona State Sun Devils in Tempe. Utah takes a trip to Morgantown, West Virginia to play the Mountaineers for the 3rd time in history. Also like the game before for the 3rd time, and back in SEC country, Notre Dame take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. I can only imagine how wild downtown Fayetteville will be if the Hogs can pull off an upset. The final game for Week 5 brings us to Happy Valley, where 2 top preseason ranked programs get it on. Oregon versus Penn State. Ducks, Nittany Lions, landing Franklin, a rematch of last season's Big Ten championship game at Beaver Stadium. Just like our Week 1 buildup of the Longhorns and Buckeyes, these 2 schools can relock and load for a new season. We begin with the Nittany Lions, who come into 2025 with one of the best offensive lines in all of college football, with Nolan Rucci in his 2nd year on campus, Cooper Cousins, Nick Dawkins, who begins his 2nd season as a starter, Vega Iwane, who started in all 16 games last season for Penn State, and the versatile Drew Shelton. This group will allow the Penn State offense to get back over 3,000 yards on the ground and protect Drew Aller, who might even get sacked less for the upcoming season. Also, this unit is the reason why many in the media have the Nittany Lions at number 1 going into 2025. Now, I know that you know that we know Tyler Warren is gone to the NFL, and Penn State needs to find that X factor, which they might already have in Luke Reynolds, who was the number 1 tight end recruit in 2024. Slide tight end notes, Reynolds had a 32-yard run last season, so maybe we got a bit of a preview of what we might see for the 2025 offense. The Nittany Lions defense will have 6 starters, who most likely post another top 10 rush defense, maybe even get back to the tippy top like they did in 2023. I also expect Danny Dennis Sutton to hit double-digit sacks, maybe even get more than Abdul Carter's 2024 numbers. Now to the visitors, the Oregon Ducks. We talked a little bit about the 2024 Big Ten champions in Week 2, where we mentioned that we aren't in the 1970s, but are in the 2020s, baby. And Oregon looks like they ain't ever gonna stop being a team you have to take seriously as a contender. The Ducks' new QB1, Dante Moore, who before his transfer to Eugene was a Bruin and started in 5 games for UCLA, and in one of those games beat the recent NFL first overall pick, Cam Ward. Yeah, totally forgot that happened. You could also see why many that talk about college football have him as a sleeper to win the Heisman this season. this should be some good ingredients to getting back to the number 15 pass offense in 2024, or back to the tippy top like Oregon did in 2023. Since we are comparing 2024 to 2023, the Ducks defense, after they made the move to the Big Ten, somehow improved for opponents' total yards. But Oregon only has 4 starters coming back. Maybe we see a bit of a fall off this season, but another but, because the whole Oregon depth chart is filled with former 5 and 4 star recruits. Yeah, that Nike money looks to be fine to me, and Dan Lanning's Big Ten program should be okay in 2025. So, this game comes down to who has the X factor. As Johnson was that in last year's encounter, who might it be in this one? We'll have to wait and find out, but my guess is Noah Whittington or Kenyon Shadiq. Okay, we'll see you guys again for some more week-by-week previews for the 2025 college football season, and bye-bye for now from the couch.